Okay, good evening, everybody. My host, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, sir. We can see you, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Thank you. I want to welcome you guys to corporate reporting class. That's the online video lectures. We are going to continue with or from where we stopped the last time. I want to believe you have a great day, and I want to also believe you are creating time to study, even if it's for a few minutes or a few hours in a day. I just want to believe, as I said, okay. So let's continue with from where we stopped. We checked IFRS 13 the last time, then we also started lectures on IAS 37. So why are we, I think we have started, so I can't really remember where we stopped. So I'm going to take it from the beginning. Okay, so even it's also in my act to also recap on what we did the last time. So since we started at 37, so let's just start straight up because of time. So let's see whether we can conclude the standard and then probably move to another standard, which is IS 38, intangible assets. So let's see. We said the last time that when an entity requires a future expenses or future expenditure to be made, and they are uncertain about the amount or the timing. That is when the expenses will actually be required. Then that is a provision. So they can go ahead and make a provision. So I remember we said before IAS 37, entities normally use provisions to smooth their accounts, to try to manipulate their reported profits. Okay, so that's what they use provisions for. So I remember I made mention of one type of window dressing. That's a big bat accounting. That is entities make provisions in the year they are making profits and release those provisions in the years they are making losses. Okay, so that's why there is a standard on when and how much an entity should make when it comes to provision. So what we are going to be looking at is what are the recognition criteria. That's the first thing we're going to look at when it comes to provisions. We are going to look at the measurement. How do you measure provisioning? Okay. Then we are going to look at contingent liabilities, then contingent assets. Okay. So what happens? Do you make provision for contingent liabilities, or do you also make provision for contingent assets? We're going to find out in a while. Then from there, I will now show you some specific applications of provisions. There are 5 of them, and you need to be aware of those 5 because this is corporate reporting class. Okay. So you need to be aware of the 5. Number 1 is future repairs to assets. So when you have an expenditure that is certain about repairs to assets, which is in the future, are you required to make provision? We are going to find out. Okay. Then number 2 is future operating losses. Okay, you're anticipating that one of your business lines is going to make profit, is going to make losses rather, and you're thinking, am I supposed to make provision? So we are going to find out. Then number 3 is onerous contract. What happens when you have an onerous contract? Onerous contract simply means the cost of fulfilling the contract exceed the economic benefit from the contract. Okay, so what happens? Can I make provision? We are going to find out. And the last 2 is environmental provision and restructuring provisioning. Then we say bye-bye to IS 37. The next time we're going to talk about it is probably when we are doing revision. So you need to understand the principle. So according to IS 37, provision is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. Provision is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. This standard is very key as far as corporate reporting is concerned because it's quite significant, because it's if not applied correctly, okay, if you don't apply it correctly, then the what's it called, it can lead to manipulation of reported profit, which is part of window dressing. Okay, so you have to understand the principle. When can made provision. So a provision is a liability. Remember, under the element of financial statement, we said we have 5 elements. We have assets, we have liability, we have equity, we have income, and we have expenses. So I dwell much on asset and liability because that's what we've been seeing much more, okay? And we say liability is a present obligation arising from past events which will lead to an outflow of resources embodying economic benefit. So as per IS 37 is now defining provision as a liability. So that means before I can create provision, I must have a liability. But the problem with provision is that it's uncertain. The amount is uncertain, the timing is also uncertain. So that's why I needed to create a provision for a future expenses that I don't even know when I'm going to pay, and I don't even know the amount with with certainty. So that's why we call it provision. So when do I now make provision? Now you need to be with me here because this is the foundation. So I'm trying to buy time so that some of our students, probably because of network, or probably they are not at home yet, or they are trying to settle down, they can also join us. So at this juncture, you have to put me on loudspeaker. If you are cooking, put me on loudspeaker. If you are doing something else, maybe you are eating, okay? You have to put me on loudspeaker. But obviously, you cannot be watching movie at this moment, okay? So put me on loudspeaker on any of the devices you are using, okay? And you need to listen to me. If you get this principle, you can tackle any question when it comes to questions on IS 37. Because once you understand the principle, we're going to apply that principle in solving questions. If you're an accountant in practice, this is very key. When you see provision made in the financial statement, 3 conditions must have been met at the reporting date. I'm very sure that everybody that is watching me, except probably you are joining for the first time today, but if you have been under my lecture before now, you should know what is a reporting date because we dwell much on that when we did IS 10. So reporting date for an accounting year from January to December is December 31, 20 of a particular year, let's say 2019. That's the reporting date. So at the reporting date, when I'm preparing my account, 3 conditions must be met before I can recognize provision. You know, I've told you the reason, the essence of IS 37 is to try to regulate how much provisions an entity can make and give guidance on the recognition criteria, okay? Because if not properly done, entities can use provisioning to manipulate the accounting profit. So I need to tell you all that because sometimes you may not even require detailed calculation or whatever when it comes to provisioning. The examiner can just ask you the reason behind the standard. So that's why you need to know, okay? So on December 31, 2019, I'm preparing my company's financial statement, whether I'm pulling it out from my system or whatever, and I need to recognize provision. Then I ask myself 3 things, okay? Those are the 3 conditions that must be met. Probably I explained in the last class, I can't really remember, but let me just take it as if we have not done it before so that we can understand. Number 1, there must be present obligation, legal or constructive, as a result of past events, that is obligating events. That's the first condition that must be met. Number 2, I'm still coming back there, I'm still going to explain. Then number 2, okay, an expenditure is required to settle the obligation, okay? That means an outflow of resources will be required to settle the obligation. That's number 2. Then number 3, the cost or the amount of the obligation can be measured reliably, okay? The amount of the obligation can be measured reliably. When those 3 conditions are met, I can go ahead and recognize provision. If I meet 2 out of 3 conditions, I cannot recognize provision. If I meet 1 out of the 3 conditions, provisions cannot be recognized. If I don't meet any of those conditions, obviously, provisions cannot be recognized. So at the reporting date, the 3 conditions must be met, okay? So you need to ask yourself, if you see an exam question, an examiner is asking you, can the entity go ahead and recognize provision? Then you ask yourself this question, is there a present obligation, either as a result of legal obligation or constructive obligation as a result of past events, okay? And that is obligating event. That's number 1. If the answer is yes, that's fine, but that's not sufficient. You need to ask again, will an outflow of resources be required to settle the obligation? If the answer is yes, that's brilliant. We have met 2 conditions, but that is not sufficient again. I need to ask the third question. Can the amount of the obligation be measured reliably? And if the answer is yes, obviously, they can go ahead and recognize provision. So let me now break it down. Let me now try to explain what we mean by that. Because when we solve questions, this is the foundation, and that's what you need to know. So let me start by saying that from the first condition, that there must be present obligation. Now, you have to be with me. Present obligation, not future obligation. There must be present obligation, which can be legal or constructive. So what do you mean by legal obligation? Legal simply means you have entered into a contract, or maybe when you are selling an asset to any of your customers. So part of the agreement is that they can return the asset for within a certain period of time, and you are going to repair it for them for free. You have entered into a legal obligation. It's part of the terms of sale. Okay, you have entered into a legal obligation. So when they bring it, then you need to repair it for them. So there is a present obligation already. What do we mean by constructive? Don't forget, we said there must be present obligation. So in brackets, legal or constructive. So what do you mean by constructive obligation? Constructive obligation means it puts you as an entity because of what you have been doing as a result of past pattern of practice. It is something you have been doing in the past. Okay, even though it's not written anywhere, but you have created a constructive obligation. So everybody knows that when they buy any item from you, you will repair for them for free within 3 months. That is constructive obligation. Okay, I could remember when FCA started what's it called, full classes. Okay, so there was this there was a lot of workload because we need to do the weekend lectures. We also need to run free online classes on WhatsApp and Telegram. Okay, so the pressure was much. So we are considering stopping the free classes so that we can focus on the what's it called, the weekend classes. And somebody said, no, we can't do that. Why? Because we have created a constructive expectation or obligation, okay? Because people already know that FCA, every diet, they will hold free classes on either WhatsApp or Telegram. So that is a type of constructive obligation. So in that case, we needed to continue, even though it was never easy, but because of the passion. So we need to continue, okay? So an entity, because of the past pattern of practice, they might have created a constructive obligation. So in that case, it means that there is a present obligation, but we are not done yet. As a result of past events, it has to be something that has happened in the past. That is an obligating event. So what do you mean by obligating event? Obligating event simply means it puts you as an entity in a position whereby you have no realistic alternative than to settle the obligation. It simply means you cannot avoid the obligation. You cannot run away from the obligation. That is what we call obligating event. Once you can avoid it, you cannot create provision, even if it is required by the law. Okay? Even if it is required by the law, once you can avoid that obligation, you cannot make provision. Okay? So that is what I mean by obligating event. It gives you no realistic alternative than to settle the obligation. And of course, number 2, an outflow of resources will be required to settle the obligation. That is in form of cash, okay? And the amount of obligation can be measured reliably. Once those 3 conditions are met, then you can go ahead and recognize your provision. Okay, so I deliberately did not show it on the screen so that I can express myself properly. So everything I've said is in your notes, right? So that I can really express myself. So because when I read from the screen, it has a way of limiting my expression. Okay, so but because of guidance purpose, that's why we needed to show you on the screen. So everything I've just explained is there, so you can go there and check it out. Okay, it's exactly the same thing I've said. Okay, so after the recognition, what happens? We have measurement. Okay, those 3 conditions has been met. I've told you that anytime you are looking at standards, you look at for 4 things. Okay, number 1 is technical definition. We have done it already. That provision is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. Okay, then number 2, recognition criteria. We have also done it. We said before you can recognize provision, 3 conditions must be met at the reporting date. Number 1, there must be present obligation, legal or constructive, as a result of past events. That is the obligating event. And number two, an outflow of resources will be required to settle the obligation. And number three, the amount of obligation can be measured reliably. So those three conditions has been met. How do I measure? I have told you that anytime you see measurement, it simply means value. At what amount will I measure my provision? Okay, so IAS 37 gives a guidance on how to measure provision. It said provision should be measured at the best estimate of the expenditure that will be required to settle the obligation at the reporting date. Because I'm not really too sure about the amount. So all I can do is to measure it using the best estimate of the expenditure that will be required to settle the obligation. For a single obligation, what do you mean by single obligation? For example, one of your customers has sued you. So you are in the court case, okay? So for a single obligation, all you need to do is to the most likely amount payable, okay? That's what you need to do, the most likely amount payable. So just try to estimate what is the, for example, somebody has sued you for 5 million naira and you consult your lawyer and the lawyer is saying, oh, don't worry, maybe the judge will award, maybe 1 million naira. So you just look at the most likely amount payable. Then you provide for it, okay? Then number two, for a large population of items, for example, you have warranty provisions. Why is warranty provision a large population of items? You have sold about 1,000 phones, okay? You are a dealer, you sell phones. So you have sold about 1,000, okay? And that is, and those 1,000 phones you have sold, they are under 1 year warranty, okay? So that is a large population of items. So in that case, you are going to use what we call the expected value, okay? You're going to use an expected value for a large population of items. So you're going to solve questions on that and you see how it works, okay? Now you have to be with me here. Both measurements must be discounted to their present value, okay? Whether you are using the most likely amount payable for a single transaction or the expected value for a large population of items, they must be discounted, especially if they are material. They have to be discounted to their present value. So I want to be, I think I'm aware, or let me say, all you guys, you understand when I say it has to be discounted to present value, because this is not the first time that we are coming across this, okay? We saw it right from the onset when we did IAS 36. If you remember, when we said an asset is impaired when the carrying amount is higher than the recoverable amount, and the recoverable amount of an asset is the higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use. And we said when you want to estimate the value in use, you look at the future cash flows, then you discount to present value. So that's the same thing we are saying here. So provisioning is in the future. You are trying to estimate the amount. So if it's material, you have to discount to present value. And of course, the amount of provision will be increased by the finance cost, which you recognize in your income statement. So that's what that one is saying there, okay? So you can read all of that. So let's now look at this exercise to demonstrate our understanding. Don't ever expect this kind of question in your exam. No way, okay? But I needed to build your confidence and you see how it works. So we come from simple question until we go into a very complex and bigger question. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no complex question when it comes to IAS 37. It's pretty straightforward. When you get to where you see standards, where you see complex questions, I will tell you. For example, IAS 8, accounting policy, but you will understand. So I'm not scaring you, right? I'm not scaring you. Even the IAS 19 that you think is quite difficult, it's not difficult. Okay, you're going to pieces it. Okay, when times come, very quickly or very shortly. All right, now let's see this. Let's just look at this question. Clean sales domestic appliance. When I approach question, I will read it first and then I'll now go back. I will try to analyze it just the way you would have done when you are in the exam hall. That is how to analyze question. Okay, so don't look at the solution. No, I've told you the solution is there in your notes, but don't look at it. Let us look at the question first. Let's see those salient things that we need to bring out. That is how to build yourself. Try to conceptualize the answer. Try to produce the answer from your memory. You may not need to write anything down, but just look at it and see, can I even attempt this question? Okay, then before we now see how the solution looks like. So let's do it together. Okay, I'm sure we are doing it together. Obviously, both of us cannot be wrong. Okay, even though I'm not seeing you, whether you are laughing at me, whether you are laughing for me, whether you are laughing beside me, I did not know. Okay, but all I know is that I'm pretty sure you are enjoying the class, right? Okay, so sometimes I might put in some jokes, so don't mind me, because some of you, let's move fast. No, I know what I'm doing. Okay, so we need to take it steadily. I know where I'm supposed to be slow, and I know where I'm supposed to be fast. Okay, so just adopt my system of teaching. Okay, so let's look at this question to demonstrate our understanding on how to provide or how to make provision. Okay, now Clean sells domestic appliances such as washing machines. On 31st December 2021, Clean decided to start selling machines, start selling washing machines. Sorry, I'm not reading properly. It's impairment, right? It's impairment. I've been working since morning, so it's impairment. But you can't classify me as head for sale. Okay, so you have to manage it like that. Okay, so let me try and read properly, right? Okay, now on 31st December 2021, Clean decided to start selling washing machines with a warranty. Okay, that's fine. Under the terms of the warranty, Clean repair washing machines at no charge to the customer. Okay, if they break within the warranty period. Okay, that's fine. Okay, now the top paragraph. Let's see. The entity estimates, based on past experience of our correspondence with customers, that 20% of the washing machines sold will require repair within the warranty period at an average cost to Clean of 15 naira per machine. Okay, Clean sold 200 machines on 31st December 2021. The time value of money should be ignored. So the examiner already told us to ignore the time value of money. That means we are not discounting to present value. So you don't need to be looking for it. Okay, so in the requirement, he has to find out, calculate the what's it called, warranty provision required. Okay, so here we don't need to struggle. The examiner already told us, just told us straight what would be the warranty provision. So that means this question, they've already met those three recognition criteria. Okay, but even if I still want to find out whether they have met recognition criteria, I can still do that. Okay, so let's find out. They said under the terms, can you see? Clean will repair washing machine at no cost, provided they are returned within a warranty. So they have already created a legal obligation. That is it. So they cannot run away from it. And it's as a result of a past event. So what's the past event? The sale. They have sold it in the past. Okay. So they met the first condition. And number two, will an outflow of resources required to settle this obligation? Obviously, yes. They needed money. Okay. Because they are going to do it for free for the customer, but to them it's a charge, it's a cost. Okay, so that is it. That's how you do it. Let's say in part A of that question, the examiner is asking you, can they recognize provision? Okay, so that's how you do it. Okay, and the last one is, once they meet those two conditions, so obviously the cost can be measured, reliably. But that's not what the examiner asks us to do. But I'm just showing you how you analyze question. So what the examiner actually wants is the measurement. How much? So what I need to do is this. I will now look at the question. Okay, I was told that 20% of the machine were sold and will require. So based on experience, they are thinking that out of 100% sold, 20% will come back, and it's going to cost me it's going to cost me 50 naira per machine. Okay, when I sold when 20% is returned, okay, out of what I sold. Okay, so how many did I sell? So out of these 200 washing machines, out of the 200 washing machine, 20% of these 200 will be returned. If 20% of 200 will be returned, how much will I repair? It is 50 naira. So I'll simply say 20% of 200 machines that were sold multiplied by 50 naira per machine. So the figure I get, I'll go ahead and recognize it as my provision. That's it. Okay, as I said, don't expect this kind of question in the exam. Okay, but it just to make you to understand how it works. Okay, but sometimes the examiner can go solo and they can give you this kind of question as a free mark, because sometimes it happens every day. You just see one so simple question and you're wondering, am I actually writing icon exams? Okay, I think I wrote a paper like that. I have to check again. That was advanced taxation. Okay, because I have to check again. Is it not taxation paper that they gave me? Because I think I finished that exam. If I can remember correctly, I finished that exam 1 hour 20 minutes. I slept in that exam because I just saw it. This question is so simple, right? Okay, so it happens sometimes. Okay, 1 hour 25 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes. Yeah, for a three hour paper. In fact, you never came to me to answer, are you okay? I say, yeah, are you done? I say, yeah, okay. But I can't go out. So I just have to sleep in the exam. Okay, so that's it. That is if you have done a lot of preparation. Okay, so sometimes you just have to prepare because you've not seen the question. It's only when you see the question you can now determine whether you have over prepared or you have under prepared. Okay, and sometimes when you get to the exam hall and you pick the question paper, you read through from question 1 to question maybe question 6 or 7, or as the case may be, and you now see that what you have in your head is not enough to solve the questions behind you. Don't give up, okay? Just put the question paper down. If you have gone to the exam hall with a bottle of paper, with a bottle of water, just open it and drink it and say, no way, I'm going to conquer this question. Then open it again and start, okay? So don't be discouraged, okay? So I've written so many exams like that where what I have in my head cannot even provide answers for the question facing me, okay? But you just have to say, here, no, I cannot come out. And sometimes it works out, and when the result comes out, you now realize that you actually conquered it. Okay, so let's move on. On my subsequent measurement, obviously, I'm sure you are familiar with it. The kind amount of that present value, that's your, what's it called? The provision, that you have discounted will have to be increased by the discounting factor, okay, by the finance cost. So that means you are going to do what we call unwinding of discount, okay? You are going to unwind it. So what you need, we have done this even under leases. You remember? So you debit your finance cost and you credit your provision without discounting, okay? So that's what you are doing there. That's quite simple. So we will have done that several times before now. So under the recognition, of course, when you provide, okay, there's a rule under IS 37. You must use it for what it has been provided for. Okay, if you provide to do what's it called, warranty, for example, it has to be done. Okay, so let's now say within that period, nobody returned, no goods were returned. So what do? You have to write it back. That's the recognition. You have to write it back. That is the meaning. Okay, all right. So you now have provisions and creative account. I've explained that. In fact, that was my foundation. So I've actually explained. In case the examiner wanted to also explain, you can read further on that. So we don't need to waste time. In fact, we even did what's it called? Creative accounting and window dressing. We even did it as a topic. Oh, okay. So and I even took my time again to also explain. Okay, but as we move on, you keep seeing window dressing, you keep seeing creative accounting because it's reflecting all over the standards. Okay, so let's now look at that provision. So we are coming back to provision, but the time we are the next time we are looking at provision is the specific application. Those are the 5 things. But before we do that, let's quickly look at contingent liability. There is a great difference between contingent liability and liability itself. I have defined liability for you. The examiner will not ask you what is a liability. They will not ask you what is a liability. However, it could form part of your explanation. That's why you cannot, commonize all of them. They look so simple, but they are the things you need to know. Okay, so a liability is a present obligation. So when you now talk about contingent, it simply means before the liability or before that obligation will crystallize to become a liability, it will be dependent on one or two uncertain future events. Okay, it will be dependent on one or two uncertain future events which are not within the control of an entity. That's what they mean by contingent liability. And as far as 37 is concerned, you cannot recognize provision for contingent liability. So you have to be with me. Anytime you see a question in a scenario-based question, you're not doing any calculation here. The examiner can just give you a scenario-based question and ask you, can they, identify whether they can recognize provision? Then you check properly. Is it a contingent liability? Yes. Why is it a contingent liability? Because it is a possible obligation, okay? It is not a present obligation. It is a possible obligation arising from past events whose existence will be dependent or confirmed on the outcome of one or more uncertain future events that are not within the control of an entity. For example, I have a pending court case. One of my customers sued me around November or around December or in January, so I didn't know whether I'm going to pay or not. Okay, the judge has not passed any case. Okay, so that could be an example of a contingent liability because I'm not sure whether it's going to crystallize. Okay, so that is why it's a contingent liability. So in that case, I will now check for 3 things. It's either that contingent liability is remote. Okay, if it is remote, I'm going to ignore Remote simply means it's less than 20% or 10%. Okay, because it's remote, it may not happen. My lawyer has told me, don't worry, they will just throw it away. So it depends on how the examiner has actually framed the question. You can see some of those questions under your review questions. Okay, so you will see them there. Okay, so if it's remote, then you ignore. If a contingent liability is possible, you can make what's it called, a disclosure as a note to the financials. Okay, and if it is probable, you can also make what's it called, you can also make disclosure, and sometimes you might need to provide depending on the case. Okay, but ordinarily the contingent liabilities, you don't make a provision because you are uncertain. Okay, so if you look here, let's see. Let me see whether I can highlight that. Okay, so if you look here, a contingent liability should not be recognized. However, it should be disclosed unless the possibility of future outflow of economic benefit is remote. So that's it. So if it's remote, you don't need to do anything about it. So you have a pending, what's it called? Pending court case. Okay. Warranty provision. So somebody can be asking me, why am I saying warranty provision as a contingent liability here? You are seeing it here because this warranty provision does not arise as a result of legal obligation or constructive obligation. Okay, it's not within. Okay, so that's why probably you are seeing it there. Okay, so you also have income tax dispute, financial guarantees given. Some of you have signed for people working in the bank as a guarantor. Okay, so you might recognize it as a contingent liability because you don't know, that is if you are an entity anyway, because you don't know whether the person you have signed for, okay, as a guarantor now, you don't know whether it's going to steal in that bank or not. But in practice, entities do what we call financial guarantee. Okay, for example, in an airline company, you are buying what's it called? The way they operate, they may not be paying cash when they are buying jet A fuel. That's the name of the fuel they use to fuel the aircraft. Okay, so they call it jet A fuel. So because you cannot be paying on cash, so you have to buy on credit, maybe per week or per month. They will now send all those invoices to you before you start paying. But before you can do that, you have to do what we call financial guarantee. You have to give that company, maybe you are using Orlando, you are using any other oil company, you have to give them a financial guarantee, okay, with using one of your banks. Okay, so in that case, it might be a contingent liability because you're not really too sure, because it's a possible liability and it's going to be dependent on one or two uncertain future events. So it's going to be dependent on maybe you're unable to pay the debt you have incurred as a result of buying those fuels on credit. So that's why you're saying financial guarantees there. Okay, so those are the examples of contingent liability. So don't forget, you don't make provisions for contingent liability. You might even ignore if it is remote, or if it is possible, or if it's probable. You might need to disclose. Okay, so let's now go to contingent asset. If it is not a contingent liability, there is a contingent asset. So a contingent asset is a possible asset. Possible, can you see? Arising from past events, but whose existence will also be confirmed by one or two uncertain future events. So can you see now? They are not within the control of an entity. So a contingent asset you don't also recognize. Okay, but all you can do is to disclose. So if a contingent asset is remote, you will ignore. If a contingent asset is possible, you also ignore. But if it is probable, you can decide to disclose. Okay, but if a contingent asset is now virtually certain, that means it ceases to become a contingent asset. It will not be treated as a normal asset. So one of the examples you can see there is a pending court case in favor of an entity. For example, I sued one entity, I sued another entity, or I sued one of my customers. Okay, so I'm expecting maybe damages. Okay, but I'm not really too sure because it's going to be dependent on the outcome of the court. So it could be an example of a contingent asset. So in that case, if it is probable, I might require to I might require to disclose it as a note in my financial statement. Okay, so that's how you see that in the exam. So you now have problems with applying IS 37. Of course, some of you be thinking definition of contingent liability is a serious problem. Virtually certain and remote is also confusing us. So I don't know what they are saying. So you might need to check all those. I've mentioned all of them when I was explaining. Okay, so we don't need to waste time on that. So let's now go to the 5 specific application. Now, in the next couple of minutes, we should be done on IAS 37. Although we have some questions we are going to solve, So that one may take our time a little bit, but notwithstanding, let's see whether we can complete it before we reach our 10 o'clock hour mark, so that we can check another standard before we go to rest. Okay, so let's see now. Future operating losses. Future operating losses. So you have to be with me. Okay, so because you might see this kind of you might see things like this in a scenario-based question. Now, if the examiner is testing IAS 37 at this level, I don't expect them to test it within normal provisioning, just like we have done just now, or within what's it called, contingent liabilities, or within contingent assets. That's for financial reporting. That, as far as I'm concerned, okay, that's for financial reporting. So what I'm expecting them to take is either of these five. Okay, they may not even take all of these five. They may not, but they might take either of these five, especially restructuring provision. Okay, so that's why you have to be with me. You have not been listening to me since we have started, so you have to, be with me here. If you are dozing, try and stand up at this time, okay? Or you put your leg inside the water, okay? All right. So just try to listen to what I'm saying. Now, future operating losses. What does that mean? I have a business, and I'm thinking in the near future, let's say in the next accounting year, this business will make loss. Okay. So the question now is this: when I'm preparing my account this year in December 2019, I'm estimating that my entity C or business C is going to make loss around February next year or around March next year. So as at this year, in the reporting date, can I make provision? So that's the question. So the answer, whether it's yes or no, it is not you to decide. Okay, it is the standard, and your understanding of the standard will also make you to decide. Okay, now can I make provision for future operating losses? The answer is no. Why can't I make provision? Anytime you see any question on future operating losses, you are going to say, and the examiner is asking you, should I make can the entity make provision? You tell them no, no matter how the question has been structured. Why? Then you don't say no, and you leave the answer like that, and you now do like this. I have finished, I can. No, you have to understand why we cannot make provision for future operating losses. So let me take you back to the three conditions. Okay, we said there must be present obligation. So when you are saying you want to make provision for future operating losses, was there present obligation as a result of legal or constructive obligation? No. Okay, there was no present obligation because it relates to the future. I ask myself again, is it as a result of past events? No way. It relates to the future. Obligating events. Can I avoid the loss? Okay, can I avoid the loss? Yes, I can avoid the loss because I can sell that business before the loss occur. That is it. I cannot recognize provision. Okay, so on that premise, I will tell the examiner that provision cannot be recognized. So let's see. Let's see what is there. Can you see? They relate to the future rather than past events. Okay. And the loss-making business could be closed. That's it. I can sell that business, and the losses is avoided. So meaning there is no obligation to make the loss. Okay. And even if I'm thinking my business or this business is going to make loss in the future, it might be an indication of impairment. Then I go ahead and recognize and apply IAS 36. An expectation of future operating losses is, however, an indication that an asset may be impaired. So an impairment review should therefore be conducted in accordance with IAS 36. So anytime you see a question on future operating losses, just tell the examiner, no way, provisions cannot be made. Okay, so from that premise, because it relates to the future, the loss-making business can even be avoided. We can sell it. So there is no obligation to make loss. So that's it. That's it. That's what you tell the examiner, and you are good to go. So out of 5, we have done 1. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Number 2 is called onerous contract. Is it onerous contract or onerous contract or onerous contract? Anyone? So just have pick one. At least you can see the you can see the way it is written. So, but I normally call it onerous contract. But I've not even tried to check the correct pronunciation, whether it's even correct. I don't know. So maybe some of you are just laughing at me, or you are laughing for me, or you are laughing on my head. I don't know. So whether I'm pronouncing it correctly, I don't know. But so now you sabi. Okay. So my job here is to explain for you to understand what is onerous contract, onerous contract, COVID-19. Okay, sorry. Okay, onerous contract. Okay, so what do we mean? You know, I gave you a snapshot at the beginning, right? When I said an onerous contract is a contract that the unavoidable cost of fulfilling the contract exceed the economic benefit. Okay, for example, it normally happen in leases or in rent. Okay, when you have a lease contract or you have a rent or whatever. Okay, the cost of fulfilling unavoidable cost. Okay, it's unavoidable because you are going to pay rent, you're going to pay your lease. You can't really avoid it. Okay, the unavoidable cost is now exceeding the economic benefit. For example, you rented or you leased a warehouse so that you can be bringing cars from Germany, you put it there, then you like a showroom, whatever. So all of a sudden COVID-19 happened, you cannot import again. Okay, so and the what's it called, the lease payment is running. Okay, even though the cars are not coming, so you are now thinking, or it has now resulted into an onerous contract. That means the profit or the economic benefit you gain from that warehouse, from bringing your cars into the showroom or into the warehouse, you can no longer do that. So in the short run, the unavoidable cost, which is the rent or lease payment that you're going to pay, is now higher. That to mean that contract is now higher than the economic benefit. That is onerous contract. So the question is this: at the reporting date, can I make provision? IS 37 says yes. It's not me that said it. It's the standard. So the standard says yes. Anytime you say a question on onerous contract, so you can go ahead and make provision. But when you are making provision, you have to be with me. How do I measure it? It has to be measured at the lower of cost of fulfilling the contract and the cost of terminating the contract and any penalty payment. So if I want to measure my onerous contract, for example, what is the cost of fulfilling the contract? For example, in the warehouse, I say I have 3 years to pay. Okay, at 500,000 per year. Okay, so that's 3 years to pay. Because I can't avoid it except I cancel. Okay, so I'll now say 3 multiplied by 500,000 is going to give me 1.5 million. That is the cost of fulfilling the contract. Then what is the cost of terminating? If I approach my landlord or my lessor, if I want to terminate, how much am I going to pay? Okay, and what is any penalty payment? I will also estimate it. So the lower of the two will now be the amount of the provision that I can use to measure my onerous contract. So what I just explained is what you can see here. Okay, so that is what we call onerous contract. So we're going to see some questions to demonstrate that very shortly. Okay, so let's look at the third one. You see now, provision is, we are almost done, right? So let's look at the third one. It's the only question that in fact, even the question said it will not take time because we already understood the principle. Okay, so that's why I spend time explaining the principle. I can spend 1 hour to explain principle. So if you understand the principle within 5 to 10 minutes, any big question, we will solve it because we understood the principle. The principle is at the back of my mind. All I'm doing is, what is the principle? What is the question saying? Based on the principle, I am asking the question. That's it. Okay, so that's the way to go. Okay, now let's look at the third one. Don't forget, we have looked at future operating losses. We have looked at onerous contract. Under future operating losses, no provision is required. Under onerous contract, provision is required, but it has to be measured at the lower of cost of fulfilling the contract and the cost of terminating the contract plus any penalty payment. Now, what now happens to future repairs to assets? Now you have to be with me again. Okay, you have to be with me. Okay, so now what happens when I have a definite expenses to be spent on an asset? I have a definite repair to be spent on an asset. For example, when you go to an airline, you see the aircraft. They are sure that every 6 months, every 1 year, every quarter, they must replace some components, or they must repair some component, or they must do some overhaul rather. Okay, even your company, maybe every 6 months, you normally do what's it called, AC. You normally repair your AC. You do general repairs to your equipment, your computer systems. Okay, so you are sure that you are going to spend that money. So in December, when I'm preparing my account and I'm asking myself, Can I go ahead and recognize provision for future repairs to assets? That's the question that we're being faced now. So you might see it in a scenario-based question. The examiner is asking you, future repairs to assets, that you are going to spend that money because it's a pattern of practice. Then you need to ask, can I make provision? No, 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 no. You cannot make provision for future repairs to assets. Why can't I make provision? Let me take you back to the manual. There is a manual we are following. There is a standard, okay? Before you can make provision, 3 conditions must be met. Even though it relates to the future, that is number 1, okay? But if I want to take you back to the standard, I will have to ask myself, there must be a present obligation as a result of past event, okay? As a result of past event, that is the obligating event, okay? Okay, so the obligating event means it puts the entity under a condition, under a footnote or whatever, that they have no realistic alternative than to settle the obligation. What if I sell the asset before that repair? I can sell the asset before the repair, so I don't have any obligation. Okay, so I cannot go ahead and recognize provision. Now listen to me. You have to be with me. Even if it is required by the law, once I can avoid it, I will not recognize provision. That's it. That's it. So let's see. Let's see what they are writing here. Okay, provisions cannot normally be recognized for cost of future repairs to assets or replacement. So even if the future expenditure is required by the law, can you see the entity could sell and avoid the expenses? That's it. So I don't have any obligation. That's why those conditions are very key. There must be present obligation. Instead, the expenditure can be capitalized, okay, when incurred and depreciated over the useful life. And that's where IAS 16 now came to show face, okay? PPE, property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so I don't think the examiner will bother you on PPE. Anyway, I don't think so. I've never really seen it in corporate reporting questions. It's FR, financial reporting bit. Okay, but if you have time, you can check it. I'll just do. But when I'm taking property, plant, and equipment, investment property, that one is key. Yeah, it's key. So I'll talk about IAS 16. I normally take it side by side. Okay, so let's look at this question. I think we are now okay. I think we have 2 more: environmental provision and what's it called? Restructuring. Okay, so we are done. But let's look at this question to demonstrate what we have just learned now. Okay, what we have just learned. Okay, so Danboy is a company that owns several shops, which has a year ended 31st December 2021. Okay, one of the shops is loss making, and at 31st December 2021, Danboy forecast that this shop will make a loss of 50,000 in the year ended 31st December 20x2. On 31st December 20x1, Danboy closed down a different shop. At that date, there were still 3 years left to run the shop's lease. Lease rentals are 100,000 per annum. The landlord will allow Danboy to cancel the lease if it pays one-off fee of 200,000. I discussed the accounting treatment of the above in the financial statements of for the year ended 31st December 20x1. Okay, so I'm faced with this kind of question, let's say in the exam, and the examiner is saying I should discuss the accounting treatment. I like this kind of question to teach. Okay, I like to use this kind of question where the examiner will just say discuss the accounting treatment, so that I can have the opportunity to tell you or to teach you how to identify the standard. You know, in the exam, a lot of standards are just flying up and down in your head. Okay, they're just flying. So your ability to now identify the standard. You know, when if they say in accordance with IAS 37, you already know. Okay, but here they are saying discuss the accounting treatment. So I'll now go back to the question. I was told that Danboy owns several shops. Okay, that's fine, that's brilliant. They now say one of the shop is loss making. Okay, that appears to me like future operating losses. Okay, so at December 20th, so Danboy forecast. Can you see now? Forecast that this shop will make a loss as at the year end. So that is future operating losses. Okay, so in that case, they cannot make provision for this 50,000. Never. They cannot, because it relates to the future. An entity, and the entity can even sell, okay, that shop before before they start making that loss. And even this loss that they are anticipating might be an indication of impairment. Okay, so that's that. So we have solved that part. So this one is now saying at the year end, Dan Boy now closed a different shop. Okay, you know, they already told us here that he owns several shops. So at that date, there were 3 years left to run on the shop lease. Okay, so this looks like a lease, but it's not really lease. So no. So when you see this, you'll be thinking, oh, are they testing IFRS 16 here? No. Why are they not testing IFRS 16? Why is it not IFRS 16? Let's find out. They now said, when he closed the shop, it has 3 years left, and the renter is what's it called? 100,000 per annum. Okay, and that boy can be allowed to cancel, but it's going to pay a one-off. So what is happening here? Onerous contract is calling me. Onerous contract, because the unavoidable cost of fulfilling the contract. What's the unavoidable cost? The lease rental that I need to pay. That's the 100,000 per annum, and I have 3 years left. That's 300,000. Okay, exceed the economic benefit. That's why I have to close it down. Okay, so how do I now measure? Onerous contract? It's going to be measured at the lower of the cost of fulfilling the contract and the cost of terminating the contract, including any penalty payment. So what is the cost of fulfilling the contract? I'm going to say 100,000 multiplied by 3. Okay, 100,000 multiplied by 3. Okay, so that is going to give me, can you see? It's going to give me how much we need. We don't give me 300,000. Okay, so that is the cost of fulfilling the contract. But if I need to cancel, how much am I going to pay? So they have told me that the landlord will allow Dan Boy to pay 200,000. So which one is the lower? 200,000 is the lower. So I can go ahead and make provision for 200,000. So that's what the examiner is asking. Okay, so you can see that in your solution, so you can read it. Okay, so I don't need to be reading it again so that we don't waste time. So let's look at exercise 3. Let's look at exercise 3 and see how we can navigate through this question. Okay, an entity has a reporting date of 31st December 20x7 and intends to repair an item of plant next year. The cost has been reliably estimated at reporting date of 10 or the reporting date at 10,000 naira. The repair is made in the following accounting period at the cost of 12,000. Okay, so this is a future repairs to assets. Okay, why? Because they said they intend to repair an item of plant next year. Okay, and they have already estimated it correctly at the reporting date. So the question is this: can they recognize provision? That's the requirement. No, they cannot. Future repairs to assets, you can't recognize provision because I can even sell the asset before that time. So this 10,000 that they are saying here, the repair is made here. So if this 12,000 actually meets recognition criteria as per IAS 16, they can go ahead and capitalize it. Okay, and this 10,000 can be, spent. So let's see what they are saying here. Can you see now the repairs of expenditure you have to expense? Okay, so that's it. So you can't make any what's it called? You can't make any provision because it relates to the future. Okay, it relates to the future. So let's look at exercise 4. So we are just using those questions, to test our understanding. Under new legislation, an entity is required to fit smooth filters to its factory by December 20x7. At the reporting date of 30th June 20x7, the entity has not filtered its smokers. Should a provision be made at the reporting date for the estimated cost of fitting the filters? Okay, this is a very brilliant question. Okay, it's very short, but it's a very brilliant question. Now, see, they said under new legislation, an entity is required to fit smoke filters. Okay, to fit smoke, that means by law they are required or in fact by December 20x7. So when they are preparing their account in June, they have not fixed the the smoke filters. It has not been fitted, right? As at the reporting date. But they needed to do it in the next 6 months. Okay. So they have not done. So the question is now is, can they recognize provision? Yeah, answer the question. Can they recognize provision? So let me ask. So that's the way, this is the way you do it. Is there a present obligation? No, because they are required. It's in the future. Do they have any legal? You might say they have legal, but that legal is not as a result of past events. Do they have obligating event? No. Obligating event means they have no realistic alternative than to settle. So what if I sell that business before December? That's it. So I don't have any obligation. So I cannot recognize provision. Is that the answer? Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Can you see? No provision should be made for this future expenditure, despite being capable of being reliably estimated. So that's what you do. Okay. So let's now look at the last two. So these are the last two that I'm thinking in case the examiner wants to test your idea of IS 37. This is the place I think they can come, especially restructuring. Okay, especially restructuring. But let's look at environmental provisions. We look at restructuring, then we say bye-bye. Then we solve, I think we have one question to solve. So after that question, then we say bye-bye to IS 37. So let's look at this, what's it called? Environmental provision. So why environmental provision? Okay, you know, sometimes some companies, when they operate, they cause environmental damage or they cause damage to the environment. So let me give you some examples. Look at pharmaceutical companies, sometimes because of the chemical spillage, chemical discharge and the likes. Look at, let's say, brewery company, look at oil company, look at chemical company, paint company, okay? So sometimes they cause damage to the environment, okay? So, and they might need to incur some costs to, those costs, we call it cleanup costs, so that the damage they have caused into the environment, they are able to, correct or to rectify those damages. So sometimes they can call it a cost of decontaminating or restoring the industrial site. Okay, all right. Maybe after production has ceased. Okay, so that is environmental issue or environmental damages. Okay, even the examiner can ask you under sustainability reporting. I'm still going to show you to reflect current issues when it comes to COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so I'm working on that, okay, because that is how the examiner will be thinking, and that's how you need to be aware of the current issues and the impact on corporate reporting. Okay, so so that's what we mean by environmental. So when you cause the damage to the environment, so the question is, when I'm preparing my account, do I need to make provisions for environmental damage? Okay, so that's what we are saying. An entity can make provisions for environmental damages. Okay, but before they can do that, they must have created an obligation to repair the damage, especially a constructive obligation. Okay, and that damage must have been done. It has to be related to the past damage that has been done. An entity cannot create provision for damage that will be done or that will be created. Okay, so let's see what is in note. The provision is recognized if the past event has created an obligation to repair environmental damage. If past event, we have been doing it before. So even the ones that we're going to do, most likely we might need to make provision. But if it is not created by past event, no constructive obligation, we cannot go ahead and recognize provision. So when you say environmental question, you are going to check properly, because sometimes you might need to create for provision, and in another instance, you may not need to create provision. But all you need to check is this: is it as a result of past events? Have we created the damage in the past, or have we created an obligation to repair environmental damage in the past? For example, an entity might take it as a responsibility to be repairing environmental damage, even though it was not written anywhere. That means that case, they have created a constructive obligation, okay? Or maybe it's required by the law, okay? That's a legal obligation, okay? But if it is going to relate to the future, even if a law is coming and the law is saying from now on, you start, rectifying environmental damage, okay? And it's relating to the future, they cannot make provision. But if it's relating to the past, maybe the law will have retrospective effect on the damages that have been done in the past. Obviously, I'm going to recognize provision. So that's why you need to check it properly. So let me see what is there again. Maybe I can have one or two things to add to my explanation. A provision can only be set off to rectify environmental damage that has already happened. That is it. That has already happened. So there's no obligation to restore future environmental damage because the entity could cease operations. That is it. Okay, so it has to be what has already happened. So I can't create provision for future environmental damage because I can cease operations. That's it. So merely causing a damage or intending to clean up a site does not create an obligation. Okay, so an entity may have a constructive obligation. That's what I said, to repair environmental damage if it has a publicized policies that include environmental awareness or explicitly undertake clean up to clean up the damage caused by its operation. So when you are doing that, the effect of time value of money is taken into consideration. So that means you might need to also discount to present value. So let's now see this question to demonstrate our understanding. Let's see whether we understand what they are saying here. An entity has a policy, okay, of only carrying out work, okay, to rectify damage caused by the environment when it is required to do so by the law. For several years, the entity has been operating in an overseas oil rig which caused environmental damage. The country in which the oil rig is located has not had legislation in place that require this damage to be rectified. A new government has recently been elected in the country, and at the reporting date, it is virtually certain that the legislation will be enacted that require damage rectification. This legislation will have a retrospective effect. In the B part of the question, under a license granted by local government, an entity has constructed a rock crushing plant, okay, to process material mined from the surrounding area. Mining activities have already started. Under the terms of the license, the entity must remove the rock crushing plant when mining activities have been completed and must landscape the mined area so as to create a national park. Required. For each of these situations, explain whether a provision should be recognized. Okay, so the requirement is quite straightforward. I've already told whether a provision should be recognized. So when I even read it for the first time, I don't even know what to do. Okay, but I have the principle in my head. So what will I do? I will now go back to the A part of that question. So when I look at this A, what they are telling me here is that an entity has a policy of only carrying out work to rectify environmental damage when it is required by the law. That's what they are telling me. So what it simply means is all the damages they have been doing, they didn't do any rectification since it's not required by the law. So that means they are not required, they don't have legal obligation, neither did they create constructive obligation. Then I move on. For several years, the entity has been operating in an oil rig and they have been causing environmental damage. In that country, okay, there is no legislation to rectify environmental damage. That's what that sentence is telling me, and it has reasons why they are telling me that. Okay, so a new government now came on board, which now requires that, or which is now saying that they are going to enact a law, and it's going to have a retrospective effect, and it is virtually certain. When you say something is virtually certain, it's almost 100%, at least more than 90%. Okay, that law will come into play, and when the law comes into play, it will have retrospective effect. It simply means that all the environmental damages we have caused all over the years, we are going to go back and repair them or correct them or rectify them. So the question is this: at the reporting date, can I recognize provision? Yes, I can recognize provision. Why? There was a present obligation, legal or constructive. So I'm having a legal obligation because it is virtually certain that a law will be enacted and it will have retrospective effect. And can I avoid it? I cannot avoid it because I have already created that damage. Okay, so that's what a part of the question is saying. The solution is there in your notes. I just want to be sure what I'm saying is what is the solution, so you can check. But I'm pretty sure because I'm just simply applying, the principle. Once you know the principle, that is it. So under a new license granted by local government, okay, an entity has constructed that's the story. Mining activity have already started. So under the terms, okay, this is where you are going to see the answer. Under the terms of the license, the entity must remove, okay, they already have an obligation, a legal obligation under it. So they have to remove it. at the end, even though it's now, they are entering into contract, in the future, they must remove it and they must do what we call cleanup so that they can use the place for national park. So they can recognize provision and discount to present value. Okay, they can discount it to present value. Okay, so you can see the solution there. So I don't need to even check. I'm pretty sure what I've said is what's there. So in case what I've said is not there, you can use the chat button and tell me. Okay, all right. So don't let us waste time on that. Okay, so let's now look at the last one. Restructuring provision. Restructuring provision. So I'm pretty sure you have heard the word restructuring before. Okay, when you say maybe your company is restructuring, this company is restructuring, what does it really mean? So a restructuring is a program that is planned and controlled by management. It's a program that is planned and controlled by management. So don't use overnight to start cramming the definition of restructuring. The examiner will never ask you what is restructuring in corporate reporting exams. Never. What they will ask you is the application of IAS 37 on restructuring program. And that is what I want to show you. Even during this COVID pandemic, a lot of company has undergone restructuring. Okay, so that's why this area is highly examinable at this time. Okay, I'm not really too sure whether the corporate reporting question they set for March exams is what they are going to use in this July. If it is what they are going to use in this July, maybe restructuring is there. I'm not sure. But if they are going to change it, and they want to test IAS 37, I can bet it will be restructuring provision, except they not say that question there or is not in that match. But next exam they are going to say, in fact, all this COVID pandemic that is happening, IAS 10, what's it called? IFRS 16, the concession, sustainability report. I'm still going to show you all of that, okay? Because we are going to prepare as if we prepare based on the current development, because in case they went ahead, to change the question or whatever to reflect the current, the current situation in the world, okay? And even if you are not writing July, maybe you are writing November, that's also good, okay? So you are expecting either this July or November, you can't escape it this year, COVID-19 pandemic. Even under IS, what's it called now? IS 38 that we're going to treat. I'm going to I'll be discussing, some of the, current issues, okay? For example, this COVID, this digital age that we are going into, when it comes to cryptocurrency, how do you account for it? I think I even have a question there, okay? So we're going to see all of that. So restructuring is quite key. So don't use the whole night to start cramming the definition of restructuring provision. No, but you must know how it looks like, okay, so that you understand how it works. So in a scenario-based question, the examiner is just asking you, can they make provision? That is it. Then you support your answer with the requirements of the standard. So restructuring is a program that is planned and controlled by management, and it's going to have material effects on the scope of the business undertaken by the reporting entity in terms of production or services it provides, and the manner in which the business is undertaken by the reporting entity is conducted. So those are the two things. It's going to have effect on the scope of the business and the manner in which a business is undertaken. Okay, so IAS 37 now says that it gave an example, some examples of restructuring. For example, sale or termination of a line of business. Okay, you have 5 lines of business, or you have 10 lines of business. You want to sell 1 or 2 of them. That could be a restructuring. Okay, the closure of a business location in a country or region, or relocation of a business activity from one country or in another region. Okay, you have a business location in the north. So because of the resurgence or whatever, or a terrorist attack in the north, so you are trying to relocate. Okay, so that might be a restructuring, or maybe from one region or from one country to another, or you are closing one business in one country. Okay, so that could be a restructuring. That's the example IAS 37 has given. Then changes in management structure. For example, you are eliminating a layer of management. I'm sure most of you must have encountered this in your company. That's what they normally technically call sometimes maybe downsizing. Okay, they are trying to restructure. Now, for example, in your account department or in your finance department, as the case may be, the Oga Patapata, the general overseer of them is your CFO, the chief financial officer. So under the CFO, the CFO has 4 people that are reporting to him. He has the financial accountant, He has the management accountant because probably it's a manufacturing company. He also has the what's it called, the treasury manager or the treasury accountant, and the tax person. That's the tax manager. Okay, maybe it's a group of company. Okay, so those are the 4 people reporting to the CFO. So under those people, the management accountant has another 2 or 3 officers reporting to him. The financial accountant has a bank reconciliation officer reporting to him. He also has a receivable officer reporting to him. He has a payable officer reporting to him. Which other one? All of them like that. They are reporting to him. Then the what's it called? Treasury manager also has 1 or 2 treasury officers reporting to him. Then the tax person also have 1 or 2. So those are layers, okay? So these other people too, they also have juniors. So when you look at those layers, when you try to now eliminate one layer, for example, you can say the tax accountant or maybe the treasury manager and the what's it called? They should join together. So that's what we mean by eliminating a layer of management. Okay, or maybe after the heads of department, they have some people they report to. Before those people now report to the to the MD. You now decide to collapse it and say head of department report to the MD, just like it, because you have eliminated that layer. That's management structure. Okay, so that is it. All right. So then maybe you have a fundamental organization that will have a material effect. Okay, so that is an example. As I said, you don't need to waste use the whole night, okay, to start cramming it. Just have little idea of what restructuring is all about. So once you understand that, so where we are going now is this: can I make provision for restructuring? Now you have to be with me here. So I don't want to take water so that it will not go and affect my esophagus. I'm tempted to take water, but I don't want to take it at this moment so that I want to explain this because I needed to use all my energy so that I can explain. And this is the last point when it comes to IS 37. After this time, we are done. The only thing we are going to do now is to solve some questions. Okay, one big question, then we are one big question, then we are done. Okay, so can I make provision when it comes to restructuring? Now you have to be with me here. Okay, you can actually make provision when it comes to restructuring, but before you can do that, an entity must have created a constructive obligation. Now listen to me. At the board meeting, the board has decided to close a line of business. That alone does not create a constructive obligation, even though it's in the minute of meeting to say our branch that is in the UK, we need to close it. Our branch that is in the US, we need to relocate it to Germany. They have done that at the board meeting. That does not create a constructive obligation. So before a constructive obligation can be created, 2 conditions must be met. Okay, now you have to be with me here. If these 2 conditions are not met, you cannot make provision. Number 1, there must be a detailed formal plan for restructuring that identify the business, the location, and the employees affected, and an estimate of the cost and timing involved. Okay, so there must be a detailed plan. If there is no detailed plan for the restructuring, you cannot make provision. Number 2, the employee affected must have a valid expectation that the restructuring will be carried out. That means they must have told them. So it's either they have announced it or because the plan has started to be implemented. If those 2 conditions are not there, you cannot recognize provision. So let me take it again. There must be a detailed formal plan. Okay, there's a plan. This is what we want to do. We have identified the business. We have identified the location, even the employees affected. We have also identified them, and we have done an estimate of the cost and the timing. Okay, and the employee, they already have a valid expectation. Why? Because redundancy is going to be created. Okay, that the restructuring will be carried out. Because probably we have already told them. That means we have made an announcement. We have met with the union, if there's a union. Okay, to tell them we are selling off this line of business. So because we are selling off, we may need to sack people. People might need to go. Okay, so they already have a valid expectation that restructuring program will take place, or because the plan has been implemented. So if these 2 conditions are present in a question, then you can tell the examiner that they can go ahead and make a restructuring. They can make provision for restructuring. And when we are even doing that, you have to be sure. Okay, sometimes you have to use the actual figure, but you cannot use the actual figure. You cannot estimate the actual figure. You have to use the best estimate. Okay, now you need to be with me here. Let me explain this line. Okay, let me explain this line. If constructive obligation does not exist at the balance sheet date. That is at the reporting period. You cannot make provision. Okay. For example, the restructuring provision now exists in January or February of the following year. That is event after the reporting period. So it will become a non-adjusting event. So you cannot go back to last year's account and make a disclosure. Okay, that is what that statement is saying. Can I try to read it? The constructive obligation must exist at the reporting day. Can you see that? An obligation arising after the date requires a disclosure as a non-adjusting event. I'm pretty sure you understand what I mean by a non-adjusting event, because it's indicative of condition that arose after the end of the reporting period. Okay, so how do you now measure provision? I've actually said it. Okay, I've actually said it, but let's go through it again. So that the measurement or the amount you are using must be very necessary, okay, and not associated with the ongoing activity. So IAS 37 now told us or highlighted some costs that should not be included in the restructuring provision. So you need to know all of them. You need to know all of them. For example, you have what's it called? Retaining or relocating staff, okay, retraining or relocating staff should not be there. Marketing, investment in new systems, then future operating losses, except if it's out of arising from a onerous contract. Okay, so that is that. So in a question, they might include all these figures, so you have to exclude it from, from what's it called? Restructuring provision. So I've also answered this, right? Okay. Let me also explain this. What I said earlier is still the same, right? So let me put it up again so that I will explain it with this. Now, if the obligation, that's a constructive obligation for restructuring, arise after the end of the reporting period, is a non-adjusting event. Okay, but if the obligation arise within or as at the end of the reporting period, okay, but because you are not sure of the amount, you now used estimates. So in January, after the end of the reporting period, you now see the actual amount of the restructuring provision. We go back to last year's account and treat it as an adjusting event. So that's what I highlighted there is saying. Okay, so that means these expenses should be measured at actual cost. Can you see where this is known? Even if this was only discovered after the reporting date. So when you are doing it, it has to be measured at the actual cost. So let's look at this question. Let's look at this question to demonstrate what we have learned. Okay, on 15th January 20x5, the board of directors of Shein voted to proceed with two reorganization schemes involving the closure of two factories. Shein reporting date is 31st March, and the financial statement will be authorized for issue on 30th June. When I say this kind of question, I'm thinking, are they testing IAS 10? Because they're already telling me that the reporting date is 31st March, and the financial statement will be authorized for issue. Okay, then I continue to read. Under Scheme 1, the closure cost will amount to 125,000. The factory is rented on short-term lease, and there will be no gain or loss arising on this property. The closure will be announced in June and will commence in July. Scheme 2, the cost will amount to 45,000 after crediting 105 profit on disposal on certain machines. The closure will take place in July, but redundancy negotiation will begin redundancy negotiation began with the staff in March. Okay, required for each of the two schemes, discuss whether a provision should be recognized, and if so, at what amount. Okay, so what will I do here? So they have two schemes. Okay, I've told you, anytime you're answering questions, date is very important. So my reporting date is 31st March, and the board of directors, they voted. Okay, so this alone does not create what's it called? Does not create a constructive obligation, because this is restructuring. They said they want to reorganize. They want to engage in organizational schemes that involve closure of two factories. So that's restructuring. Okay, so but they voted in January 2015, shortly before the end of the reporting period, which is 31st March. Okay, so what will I do? I will now go to Scheme 1. They said the cost will be 125, and the factory is rented on a short-term lease. There will be no gain and loss. All those ones, they are story. Now, the closure will be announced in June. It will be announced in June. Don't forget, before I can recognize restructuring provisions, two conditions. I must have identified the business. Can you remember? Okay, there must be a detailed formal plan. There must be a detailed formal plan. There is okay. So, and number two, the employee affected must have a valid expectation by either because we have announced it to them or because the restructuring plan is being implemented. So the closure will be announced in June, even though the board of directors had made a decision in January. So this June is after the reporting date. So I cannot make provision. Can you see now? That's the way you analyze question, because that constructive obligation must exist at the balance sheet date. So 31st December was my balance sheet date, and it will be announced in June, and it will commence in July. I cannot make provision. Okay, so that's what I tell the examiner, because they don't have valid expectation, even though there might be a detailed plan. So the employee involved, they don't have any valid expectation, so there was no constructive obligation has been created as at the balance sheet date. So I go to scheme 2. So that's how you look at question. It's as simple as that. I go to scheme 2. The cost will amount to 45,000. Okay, after crediting 105, they are not supposed to credit 105. They are supposed to use the actual cost. So obviously, that is 150,000. But let me find out whether we can create provision. Let's find out. The closure will take place in July. We are going to close the factory in July. That's scheme 2. We will close it in July, but redundancy negotiation began in March. Okay, they have already begun redundancy negotiations. It simply means it's either they are meeting the staff that be affected themselves, or they are meeting the union people. Okay, and my end of the year is also in March. Okay, so that means at the reporting date, a constructive obligation has been created. So under scheme 2, I can make provision for 150,000. So because they are not supposed to credit this, okay, so you just add it back to the cost. Okay, so that is it. So you can look at the solution, and that's you have there. So that is it. So that's how you do that question. Okay, I have another question. Hey, okay, I didn't even know that. Okay, so let's solve this question again. Okay, all these questions, they are big for nothing. They are so simple. Okay, so don't run away. When you see big question, most likely, I'm very sure maybe this answer may not even pass 2 pages. Okay, so let's quickly look at it. I think we say I have one big question. Okay, anyway, don't worry, I'm not going to rush you. If it's only IS-37 we complete today and you understand, I'm satisfied. Okay, even if you cannot start intangible assets, because that intangible assets is very key. Okay, as far your syllabus is concerned. Okay, you're saying I've been saying everything is key. Okay, but I've also told you that you don't need PPE. Okay, so because at this level, it might not be key. Okay, but I will still explain it anyway. Okay, so let's look at this question again. Now, on 30th June 2022, the directors of Delta decided to close down a division. Okay, that's fine. And the decision was announced to the employees affected on 15th June. Oh, they've already told them, okay, and the actual closure occurred in June or August, prior to 20th financial statement. Oh, that's fine. So here, they have already met those conditions. So most likely, the examiner will ask me how much. That's it. That's the measurement. How do they measure? So that's how much. Okay. So that to be the actual cost. Okay. If the actual cost is not available, you now use the best estimate. Okay. So they gave me redundancy. This is estimate. They gave me staff retraining. This is actual. But don't also forget that there are some costs that must be excluded from restructuring, if you can remember. Okay. So we also have operating loss. Okay. Then we have profit on sale. Okay, so the actual redundancy cost was 20 million, and the actual operating loss as at that date was 15 million. So what amount of restructuring? Okay, so if you look at everything, all you are looking for is the actual amount. So if I look at the actual redundancy cost, it's 20 million. But when I look at operating loss, I can't put operating losses. I can actually add operating losses if it's as a result of onerous contract, but I was not told here. So I will assume it's not as a result of onerous contract. So my restructuring provision will be 20 million, because redundancy cost here is an estimated amount, so I will not put it. Staff retraining, I've already been told that cost of the training staff is not part of restructuring provision. Operating loss also, I cannot put it. Okay, profit on sale cannot also be included. Okay, so my answer is 20 million. Okay, can you see it? That's it. That's how you do it. Okay, all right, and that is the end of IS-37. You have criticism, you can go through all of that. I've explained them in the course of my explanation. Okay, and this is summary of what we have been saying over 1 hour ago. Okay, that's the summary. And I think, okay, you see our question here. Okay, so we saw this class work. Okay, we need to do it together. Okay, so because you might see this kind of question in your exam, and it's very simple. So let's quickly do it together. As I said, I will not rush you. So I wouldn't say you should go and look at it on your own. So let's do it together. I didn't know. So this question is well, okay. Okay. So let's look at this. Let's try whether we can analyze this question. Okay. Makajoy, a public limited company, is a limited company. It's a leading support service company which focuses on building industry. The company would like advice on how to treat certain items under IAS 37. Oh, okay, that's fine. Now let's look at warranties. Now let's read it together. Now the company manufactures and sells building equipment which it gives a standard 1 year warranty, okay, to all customers. All right, that's fine. Now the company has extended warranty for 2 years for certain major customer. Okay, that's very key. All right. Now, and has insured against the cost of the second warranty. The warranty has been extended at new cost to the customer. Okay, so that means those customers will not pay. Okay, now let's continue. The claims made under the extended warranty are made in the first instance against Makajoy, and then Makajoy will now turn to a counterclaim against the insurance because they've insured it. So in one hand, they have maybe contingent liability, and the other hand, they have contingent asset. But we're not really told, we're just telling us, okay? So past experience has shown that 80% of the building will not be subject to warranty claims in the first year. This is pretty key. 80%, that means 80% of, we sell 100%, 80% will not be returned, okay? Then 15% will have to be returned, but they will have minor defects. That's in the first year. So you need to be with me here, okay? And I'm just trying to analyze the question for you, okay? Then we try and solve it. Then 5% will require major repair, okay? Okay, that's in the first year. So Makajoy estimate that in the second year warranty, okay, so what will happen in my second year warranty, okay, 20% of the items sold will have minor defects. 20% of the items sold will have minor defects, and 10% will require major defects. So in my second year, if 20% we have minor defects and 10% we have major defects, that means 70% we have nil defect. Just like in the first year, 80% of the building we have will not be subject to warranty claims. Okay, so the examiner now gave me some information here. So they gave me the standard warranty, extended selling price, then the cost. If you have major repair, it will be 500. Minor repair, it will be 100. Okay, that's fine. All right. So assume that sales of equipment are on 30th October 2007, and any warranty claims are made on 31 October in the year of claim. Assume risk adjusted. Okay, so that means I need to adjust. Okay, you know we said you have to adjust to present value. So in my requirements, draft a report suitable for presentation. Show the accounting treatment of the above warranty provision under IAS 37. Okay, that's fine. So let's see what we do. Let's try and solve this question. Okay, so when you want to answer this question, you can do it in form of memo or maybe, like in form of letter. So all you need to do is first explain the condition, recognition criteria, okay? All of that has to be measured and everything. So once you have done that, you now come into solving the question. So what will I do here? Okay, so be with me here. So let's look at it together. Okay, let's look at it together. Okay, we have year one, we have standard warranty. So that means people that purchased in year one, if they return it within that year, then we are going to repair for them. That's the warranty. Then for certain customer that also purchased in that same year one, if they also bring it back in that year one or in year two, because they have extended warranty, we also repair. So what am I going to do? Okay, so in my year one, okay, now listen, you have to be with me. That's why I have to highlight it so that you can see that's where the solution is. So they said 80%, that's my year one now. 80% of the building equipment will not be subject to warranty claims in the first year. Okay, so what will I do? I'll just say 80% multiplied by new. Okay, I will get 0. Even if you don't do 80%, it will not have impact on your final figure because they will not return. Okay, so that's what I will do, but I can show it to tell the examiner that I know what I'm doing. The answer is there, I guess. So don't check the answer. Let's just analyze together and see whether we're going to get it. Okay, so that's how to build ourselves. So if you notice, I'm not looking at the question, looking at the answer, come back to the no. Let's analyze it because we have learned the principle. Okay, then we're now going to look at the answer later, whether we get it. Okay, so they now said 15% will have minor defect. Now you have to be with me. 15%. So I sold 2,000 under standard warranty in year one. I also sold 5,000 under extended warranty in year one because they said in the year 31st October, the following information was relevant. Can you see? Okay. So that means I sold 7,000 in year one. Okay. Within my, and you know, in that year one, people that bought under standard warranty can return. People that also bought under extended warranty can also return. Okay. The only difference is from year two, people that bought under warranty cannot return again. That's the difference. So we're now told that 15% we have minor defects. So what will I do here? I will now say 15% multiplied by 7,000. How do I get 7,000? 2,000 plus 5,000. Okay, making 7,000 because 15% of them we have minor defects. And if they have minor defects, how much will I repair? It has to be 100 naira. So I'll now say 15% multiplied by 7,000 multiplied by 100 naira. That is it. That is it. Okay, that's the answer. Then I might need to now discount it using 4%. Okay, so that's it. That's in my year one. Okay, but I'm not done with my year one. They also said 5% require major repair. So what will I say again? I will say 5% multiplied by 7,000, then multiply by 500. So I'm not pressing calculator. I may not be able to tell if you figures, so obviously you see it in your notes, so you can press your calculator, or maybe you do it later, but at least understand how it is being done. Okay, so that's in my year one, and I move on. I will now move to my year two. So what happened in my year two? They said the second year of the warranty, 20% of the items sold we have minor defect, and 10% we have we require major repair. So if 20% and 10% we add it together, that's 30%. That means 70% will not be returned. So I can say 70% multiplied by new to still give me 0. Okay, just like the way I did 80% in year one. So in my year two now, don't forget we sold 7,000 in year one. Okay, and in year one only 2,000 have standard warranty. Now I'm in year two. So how will I provide for my year two? So what will I do? That means I will only consider 5,000 because people that bought under extended warranty can actually return because they have extension. So what will I do? I will now say 20% multiplied by 5,000. So because those 20% we have minor defects, I will now pick 100 naira. I will now say 20% multiplied by 5,000 multiplied by 100 naira. Then I also look at my 10%. Okay, can you say that 10% will require major repair multiplied by 5,000 multiplied by 500? That is it. That is the end of the question, and you discount using 4%. That is it. That's it. So as you are seeing it as big as anything, within 5 minutes, you have already solved that question. Okay, can you see now? Can you see? That's warranty claim. You first tell the examiner the principles under IAS 37. If you can do that successfully, you have your marks. Okay, so let me now show you. Okay, so can you see? So this is the calculation. All right, so this is 80% I was talking about. Okay, can you see expected value? That's 0. Then when you do this, you have 105. Then you add it together. Then you now discount by the 4%. I'm sure you know how to do discount factor by now. Okay, then for the second year, you also do the same thing. Can you see? Can you see for the second year? Okay, so you have that figure. Okay, you have those figures. Okay, so you now go, that's your calculation. So you can now present it like this. This is the figure when it was not discounted in your year 1 and in your year 2. Okay, you have 280 there. Okay, 280 in year 1. Then you have 350. That's the total figure. Okay, 350 in year 2. Okay, then provisions will now be discounted. So when you discount it, you discounted year 1, you have this figure. You discounted year 2, you have this figure. Then this is the total figure, probably because it's, you now recognize this. Okay, so that's the end of that question. That's the end of the question. That's the end of the question. Can you see? It's quite simple. And this is a summary of IS 37. Everything I've been explaining since morning, it is there. The only thing that is not there in this table or in this diagram is the specific application. So this one simply deals with provision, contingent liability, and contingent asset. We can help you, okay, to remember certain things. And you have some review questions, so you can go through them, you can read them, okay. So if you have questions on them, you can let me know, okay. So that is the end of IS 37, okay. That's the end of IS 37. I'm not really too sure whether we should do intangibles, but I don't want to bother you. I don't want to, load you with too many questions. But let me see whether I have 1 or 2 questions here. Okay. What if one condition is met during restructuring? Can provision be made? No, it has to be the 2. Okay. It has to be the 2. You may, at the board meeting, they might have already identified the business to be discontinued or to be relocated. But IS 37 says that does not create, a constructive obligation. There has to be a detailed formal plan, okay, where they have identified the business, the location, and the employee that will be affected, including the cost and the timing. Then number 2, there must be valid expectation, okay, so that the from the employee that will be affected. It's either they have announced to them or they have started to implement the plan. So it has to be 2, okay? It has to be the 2. So when there is those 2, you can now, you can now make restructuring provision. So I want you to put your mind on restructuring, even if you don't understand every other thing. It's very key, okay? So that's that. Okay, the second question, please, how did we get 7,000? Okay, I want to assume that is the last question we are solving. Okay, how did we get 7,000? Okay, let me quickly look at the question again. How did we get 7,000? That's what we used, right? Okay, can you see here? Under the standard warranty, we sold 2,000, and under extended warranty, we sold 5,000. So in my year 1, okay, that was why I was explaining earlier. In my year 1, I have sold 7,000 units. Out of the 7,000 units, 2,000 are for standard warranty. That warranty is just 1 year, okay? Then 5,000 is extended. If you see, it is already in the question. Okay, maybe I should show you again where it is in the question. Can you see? They said the company has extended the warranty to 2 years for certain customer. Can you see that? What they actually have standard 1 year warranty, but they have extended to some customer for 2 years. So what it means is those customers, they can return that product within 2 years. That's what it means. So, but in my year 1, when I'm estimating my provision, I have to consider the old that was said, because I sold 7,000 in total. 2,000 of them can only return within 1 year. Then the other 5,000 can return in year 1 or at an extended period, which is the second period. So when I'm estimating in year 1, I will consider 7,000. But when I get to year 2, I can't do 7,000 again because year 1 is gone. So if you have not brought your item for defect in year 1, the warranty has expired. So I cannot make provision for what has expired. So I only consider 5,000 in year 2. That is it. That's the logic behind it. So that's how we got the, the 7,000. Thank you for that question. I don't think I have any further question. Okay, I don't think I have any other further question. I think I should release you. Okay, I think I should release you. But before then, before you go, I'm sure some of you want to really sleep, right? Me, I can lecture till tomorrow. Okay, so on Friday, by God's grace, we shall be checking IS 38. It's a very nice standard. Okay, so I'm going to try as much as possible to also relate it with what is happening in the environment. So if you have time, I think you have the material already. I think I sent it today. Okay, so if you have time, take your time to go through it. So I don't want to load you with too many things. So let me release it for tonight. I want to wish you happy night rest, and by God's grace, I will see you on Friday. Take care.